Welcome to, this is the second part of our 8-week series where we're exploring the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, which is it's a very fundamental teaching. It's the first thing that he taught. It's the first set of practices that he taught, how to become a Buddha after his enlightenment. As Pranayamana said last week, if you've heard of Buddhism, the next one of the things that you'll learn if you explore at all is about the Noble Eightfold Path. So we're going into it, and the Noble Eightfold Path is called the Arya Ashtangika Marga. The Arya Ashtangika Marga. Marga is path, and the eightfolds, so to speak, are vision, emotion, speech, action, livelihood, effort, awareness, and samadhi. Yeah, and today we're going to be looking at emotion, which is the second. So last week we explored vision, and the Noble Eightfold Path can be described as having two parts, and the first part is vision, and then the rest is transformation. So the first part, the part of vision, consists of vision, and the rest, emotion, speech, action, livelihood, effort, awareness, samadhi. That's the path of transformation. So I'll talk a little bit more about how that works as we unfold it. So maybe I'll just kind of recap some of the terms that we're using. What the Buddha talked about was he sort of elucidated these areas of our lives. You'll hear from that they're quite sort of fundamental activities, some of them. Livelihood, everybody needs a livelihood. Most people do. Speech, we all speak. Action. So these are areas that happen in our life, and the Buddha's talking about how we proceed through those things makes a difference, and that this, if we go at it with the right attitude, if we deepen our understanding dharmically in these areas, then we will become more and more like a Buddha. Yeah. So the Noble Eightfold Path. So what's the difference between action that anybody could make, for instance, or speech or livelihood, and the action, speech or livelihood or emotion on the Noble Eightfold Path? Well, the Buddha used the term perfect, or sometimes it's called right. So samyak means something like whole, integral, or complete, or fulfilled. So when we talk about vision, if we talk about it on the Noble Eightfold Path, we talk about right vision, or even better, perfect vision. So these are words that we have to come to terms with a little bit, because the word perfect, I don't know, sometimes we like the sound of the word perfect, like, how was your evening last night? It was perfect. Or but sometimes we don't like the word perfect. There's that song, isn't there, My Perfect Cousin? And it's not exactly, if you've got a perfect cousin, you're not normally really happy about that. It's like so sometimes we're a bit suspicious of perfection. Yes, it can have sort of tones of sort of not very authentic or something, or not very appealing, not very real. But if we think about it in terms of perfect, as in whole, perfect as in complete, or I even thought fulfilled, completely fulfilled, then it starts to sound a little bit more like something that we we would like. So rather than feeling like incomplete, unfulfilled, a bit not very whole. When I was younger, I sort of had this very, very strong feeling like I was sort of not a complete person, and I was looking for someone else actually to sort of fill that sense of incompleteness, something. I definitely don't feel like a complete person now, but I definitely don't also have that sense of such a gap that I would like someone else to feel. So we go with the term perfect. So today, perfect emotion, which is, if it's quite a strange sounding couple of words, isn't it? Perfect emotion. I'll just say something about the word right as well, which is the usual translation. So normally we hear about this in right vision, right effort, etc. And the word right, that's pretty good as well. Like when you do things right, that feels good. But then the implication is that there's wrong. So that's the danger. I think that's why we're tending to use the word perfect. As if you do things right, you can do things wrong, and then that sets up a polarization or a tension. But there is a really nice, when the Buddha talked about enlightenment, one of the ways he described it is that something that had been knocked over or turned over had just been set up the right way up again. Yeah? So that very modest description of enlightenment, isn't it? What enlightenment is, something that had been upset, put the right way up again. The temptation is to sort of go, it's golden, it's life-changing, it's a complete reorientation of things. It's it's epic, but all true. But there's a simple way of thinking about it, that something that's been upset is turned right again. So in that way, we can think of right. So why are we talking about emotion? Why did the Buddha want us to really look at this area of emotion, of our emotional lives? It comes straight after perfect vision. So perhaps I'll talk first of all a bit, recap a bit about perfect vision. Who was here last week? Some people. Okay, it's worth a good recapping. So we're looking at a path of practice. Very often, so it's the Noble Eightfold Path, and the first step is this sense of a vision. So you might think, well, I haven't had a vision, but what we're talking about is an experience that you might have had recently, you might have had a long time ago. I can remember something, I'll sort of relate that in a minute, that I had something happen to me when I was a child, where you suddenly saw life in a slightly different way. Something shifted in the way you perceived things. Very often it happens when something really big, momentous happens that we don't want it to, like a sense of loss. So it might be a bereavement, a shift in what we thought was stable, something that we thought was stable, person that we really care for dies. That can change our outlook on life. So it might be something like that. It might be one of the things was that just the fruits of living a wholesome and happy life, you suddenly just the momentum of positivity in your life just allows for a vision of something a little bit different, allows for an opening up to something. What other? Yeah, maybe can be just an experience of intense beauty. We talked about that, where something captivates us, and often our experiences of perfect vision sort of come as a surprise. We don't always. It's not that we've been looking for it. So it has these qualities of maybe feeling more connected to the stream of life, or aliveness, or other human beings, or something of that ilk. And it can sort of seem sort of ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. And maybe you've got a few incidents in your life where something like that's happened, where you've touched into something. Might have been a meditation. I was when we were talking about it last week, I was remembering something that I've spoken about a few times, and I still sort of working out what it meant really in the rest of my life. When I didn't take very long. When I was a kid, I was just thinking about this another kid. So this is at my primary school, and there was this other kid who was a bit younger than me. I think he was in my brother's class, and he was a bit of an unfortunate kid. So I think I was sort of thinking about him with a sense of pity. I'm afraid to say, sort of like a bit like, oh dear. Like, I don't want to insult. Like, he wasn't the coolest kid. He wasn't really the coolest kid in the primary school. He was a bit sort of, I don't know, like a slight figure of fun. That didn't really run in a straight line kind of child. Anyway, first, I don't even know why I was thinking about him. I was thinking about him, and then I realised that it was nothing to do with me, that I was me and he was him. And I don't know if I can explain that, but the fact was that anybody could be anybody, that our location of our identity is just a complete coincidence, it's not coincidence. It has is nothing self-generated about it at all. And the reality of this child, and then every single other person on the planet, kind of opened up to me, and my mind kind of fell right open, just for a moment or two. And I think that experience, it didn't really shake me. I think I was a bit like, "Whoa, that's weird. Life's not what I thought it was." And then probably like went and played with my Sylvanian families, or didn't really think about it. And I mean, the implications of that little experience are ones of compassion. Yeah, I think I started off thinking about this kid with a sense of pity, but I think that conceit that comes with pity dropped away somehow, and I was just curious about the nature of who are we, and that's what opened up. And then the following thing is, well, if anybody could be anybody, then we have to really take care of each other. But really, that didn't develop in my life. I think if I'd been a bit older, or if I had other kind of even if I'd spoken to somebody about it, I had no language to speak about it. It didn't develop. I didn't think, I have to sort of act differently. But I think then similar experiences have been around different communications with different people as I got older. That little taste of something a bit strange and a bit disorientating has meant that I can more easily relate to other people with that sort of deeper knowledge. Does that make any sense? What my experience? Yeah. So that was a touch of perfect vision, or a vision of life beyond the ordinary of just trying to have fun and get things my own way. Which I was definitely that kind of child who wasn't sort of a saintly child. Yeah. So then the path of transformation sort of started when I was much, much older. Sort of, when I started practicing coming to the Buddhist Centre when I was in my early 20s, and in between, I wasn't really that inclined to make myself into a better person. So there was a long gap. But what the Buddha's suggesting is that we can touch into these glimmers that we might have to sort of reorientate our experience, and that these areas that I explained earlier, emotion, speech, effort, our meditation, can be inspired by this sense of vision, can be inspired there. And also we have to transform all of these areas, if we want to practice, into what do I mean? That the rest of the experience is we need to make effort to become. If we want to live more in that visionary experience, we have to make effort to align ourselves with it. So I have to do the metta bhavana to have that sense of unity with other living beings, that sense of solidarity, and create that, remind myself that experience I had when I was a kid felt very, very real, but it doesn't just sort of stay with me. I have to put effort into it, and be kind and thoughtful, and remember to do that to other people, to actively take people in. So the area of transformation that we're looking at now is the area of our emotions, which is a huge area, and very, very demanding, because our emotions aren't exactly under our control. Like we can sort of we can put a lid on them, and you can get by generally, civilly enough, between going about our daily business. But underneath there's a lot going on that if we took the lid off, we'd be concerned to show people. So our emotions are not always in line with our best ideas of ourselves, our noblest aims, and how we act with our closest people, our loved ones. they get the worst of it, or towards ourselves, how we polarize with other people, don't align with our noblest aims, or our vision of what we want ourselves or humanity to be. So there's a lovely aphorism which we probably overuse around here, that the Dharma life, or a Buddhist life, is finding the emotional equivalence of our intellectual understanding. And you'll know this even if you're not practicing Buddhism, that you have a great idea of self-improvement. It's going to be Pilates. It's going to be Pilates, and I'm going to do it every day, and then at last, depends how disciplined you are. It's like a few days, a week, etc., and then you've forgotten about it, or you just realise actually it's not Pilates, it's something else. So there's an idea of what is a good idea, and there might be a burst of interest, and then there might be a waning of interest, and a complete, almost, forgetting about it. Do people recognise that? Or are you all very disciplined? And yeah, and it's the same in our Buddhist lives. So I often come to things and like, oh gosh, I really understand that person now. I'm going to not get annoyed with them anymore, and then that's in my meditation. And then I sort of see them, and that purity of emotion can't survive my interaction with them, and I find that I'm irritated again. So it can be relational, or it can just be we just forget to put ourselves in great conditions. We forget we get enticed by things that look so tempting. I'm going to put meditation at the center of my life now, and then the evening before you do whatever you do that means that you're not likely to get up and meditate. So there's an idea, and then there's our actual behaviour, which can be quite different. And the reason is that our emotional life is not yet behind our idea. Yeah, that our will, which is always caught up with emotion, wants something else. So we're looking to engage our emotions. But Buddhism can't just be a set of good ideas. It has to really catch. At some point, it has to really catch deep down. It has to really appeal to something deep down. Otherwise, the motivation is going to wear out. Yeah, and sometimes that comes quite naturally. Sometimes we just get a taste. It's like, the things that I used to do just don't feel good anymore. I'm just much more inclined to more wholesome things. They just feel better. But sometimes it's not that simple. I was talking to some people today about going to study groups. So for 4 years or 5 years, I was going to a regular Buddhist study group, and we were talking about resistance. Even though every time I went to that study group, I came away feeling uplifted, exhilarated, inspired. Every time leading up to going to the group, I was like dragging my feet. I couldn't be bothered to read it. Yeah. So even though I carried on doing that for 4 years, I never, probably not even once, looked forward to going to my study group, and always came away feeling better for it. So there's, just not very integrated, not very integrated. But the good thing is the conditions were there to keep me on track. Yeah. So luckily, it wasn't just down to me on my own. If it were just down to me, that would have gone out the window like Pilates did. Yeah. Yeah. So perhaps I'll just talk a little bit more about emotions and why they're so important. Maybe actually let's just see if anyone's got any thoughts about that, about what I've just said so far. Yeah.
I sometimes get confused or sort of drawn into when to know when to sort of strive and when to let go, especially around decision making or.
Say that last sentence, especially
Around decision making. Or say if you want this direction, stick in Buddhism, but then striving and craving for maybe accomplishment in that direction.
Yeah.
And then also knowing that you're not in control of your emotions, you need to let go. But then you also let go. I feel like I'm letting go a lot of the time to other, say, less wholesome ways.
Yeah. I understand.
Feeling like you're not trying to control everything as well.
Yeah, I think I understand. I think maybe that will be easier to come back to you later when we've covered a bit more ground. That might kind of flesh out what you're talking about. And I think it's to do with getting to know yourself as well. That's a good one actually. Yeah.
I think what I kind of recognize is that all these good ideas are fun, but deep down you're sort of attached to, maybe not negative, but sort of these feelings as well. It's quite sort of comfortable to just not go. It's there's some joy in that as well.
Yeah.
I think,
yeah.
Not be stuck there, but sort of be comfortable down there maybe.
Yeah. So something about.
So even though if you go to these study groups, they'll be really fun, it's also quite comfortable to just sit on your couch and not feel that good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. So there's a comfort in not changing, isn't it? There's a comfort in just continuing what you're doing and not in staying with the familiar, which is like, in a nutshell, a lot of what we struggle with in the Dharma life. You know, that's why we're not enlightened, because we're more comfortable with something that's not as good. And quite attached to it. Yeah, and then that plays out in little ways. Yeah, and then I think there's something also about immediate gratification. So there's something good enough, immediately gratifying about staying on the couch, or there's something nice to eat in the fridge, and you can so it's immediately rewarding. Whereas going to the study group, you have to get off your bum and get there, and it might be cold or something. But also, I know you can sort of make your own versions of this. Also, it's something that demands something of one. So you actually aren't going to get the really good rewards without making an effort, and that's why it feels good, because you discover new things when you make an effort. Yeah.
I just was thinking that something that, because I've always been a very emotional person.
Yeah.
And I was like, why have I found that actually really beneficial? I think, and I think it's because emotion is just inherently in your body. And I think we layer a lot on top of emotion, but actually it can lead to a lot of truth if you can kind of follow what you're feeling. It tells you something about the reality of your experience, and you can't really cheat emotion if you're prepared to kind of face it and ask what it's trying to tell you.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, that's really nice to hear. You got that you enjoy that side of yourself, because and then there's something that you're saying about asking what it wants of you, which is different, isn't it, from doing what the emotion demands. Yeah, so it's something about our emotions. We can, at the worst, we can just go with what the emotion says and just let that run wild. Well, that's not going to be any good, is it? That's going to, if the emotion is hatred, then, well, that's going to cause trouble and pain for ourselves and people around us, or jealousy, or so there's these emotions. Some of them are pretty dangerous, so then the other thing to do is just to ignore the emotions completely and just be like, I don't know what to do with you, let's just pretend we don't have emotions, that we just have these great ideas that we do. We're very, very rational. So there's something about two ways that the emotional life can actually rule us. If we don't know what's going on, if we put a lid on it, it will be happening. It will be happening, but it will just be unconscious, and we'll be making puzzling decisions. We won't be able to follow through with our ideas because the emotions won't be looked at, but they'll be playing out. And then the other one is that we just get ourselves into trouble all the time because we just let the emotion rule us. Yeah. So there's something about the emotions that's useful, wholesome. Perhaps not the word wholesome. That's useful and that we need, but we can't. The Buddha wasn't just saying, just let your emotions out. Yeah, great. Feel whatever you feel. Just do it. Do whatever you feel, at all. What the Buddha realized is that we need to contact our emotions and refine them. So this is where the work of perfect emotion, of letting our emotional life come under the light of the Dharma, or under the light of that vision, takes work. And it's this sense of letting the emotions, well, first of all, getting in touch with our emotional life, which, can be scary, can be, there are reasons why there are unconscious parts of our minds, but doing that in such a way so that they can be transformed. And then the transformation is exciting because there's energy there. So our emotions, they use a lot of energy and they allow a lot of energy. So you know what that's like. If you're emotionally invested in something, you'll do a lot for it. Whereas if you're not, you won't. And I think both of those things are real dangers. I'm going to talk about, maybe something about the energy of emotions. And so in this book, we're exploring the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path. In this series, we're exploring, and we're sort of using this book by Sangharakshita to guide us through there. Actually, in another book, he's talking about repressing our emotions and the superficiality of that experience. So that's what happens if we don't touch into our emotional life. We're living a superficial life. And he says, we don't want to do anything with the full force of our being. When we love, we don't really love. And then controversially, he says, when we hate, we don't really hate. A small part of us is prospecting ahead, and a greater part of us is lagging behind. So I just think that's really interesting that he's even saying when we don't even do anything properly, not even hate. So when we love, we don't even love. When we hate, we don't even hate. And my own sense of that, how that manifests in this current age, is that we only let ourselves feel through social media or not through or screen engagement, etc. That there's so many distractions or so much input and stimulus that we can have that we don't give ourselves a chance for our emotional life to be available or visible. I definitely feel this when I go on retreat. I get in touch with things that I just not aware of when in my daily life, and it's because life is so busy. It's because life is so busy, it's lovely to just feel like emotionally alive on retreat. It's like, even though I feel really sad about that thing that I've sort of forgotten about, it feels right, the sense of rightness. And the suggestion there is also that we need to be in touch with the emotions, the darker emotions. They're there, and they're telling us something, like Catherine said. They're telling us things. And if we can get them on the side in our spiritual life, then we've got a whole lot more momentum going. Sangharakshita really liked William Blake and drew a lot on William Blake's thinking. And he, I don't know how much of William Blake you've read, but he really, he was really protesting against the kind of piety of the religious era he was living in. So this sense of like sort of pseudo-religiosity, very pious people like pretending to be so Christian and so good, but the repressing all of their energy energy and emotional aliveness by this layer of religiosity, so he was saying that happened, and also he was protesting against the Enlightenment, basically, which you can take that how you want, but he was saying that we think we're so rational, and he was talking about the Industrial Revolution as this kind of like disaster of rationality. So these two things, and he really just talked. He really was very controversial in sort of saying, actually, what we think is demonic is actually heavenly. So in the marriage of heaven and hell, that's kind of where he was going. And he says things that where are we going? this isn't what the Buddha said, just to let you know. It says, without contraries there is no progression. Attraction and repulsion, reason and energy, love and hate are necessary to human existence. And from these contraries spring what the religious call good and evil. But he was reversing that. So good is the passive and the base reason. Evil is the active, springing from energy. So he goes in this story in The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. He goes into hell and just kind of delights in the demonic energy. And then there are these proverbs that he's talking about, that energy is eternal delight. And I find this quite exciting, that this kind of amoral sense of energy being relished in. And I think if we're more discerning about what input we have, and that engaging with the arts, etc., poetry, reading novels, and being more choosy about what films we watch than I generally am, can also help us to awaken our emotional life. And, I don't know if you've had this experience of reading a really good novel when our emotions are articulated in a way that we sort of knew was there but hadn't yet thought of. And it's like, this novelist is describing something that I really experience in a much more subtle and interesting way than I'd come to myself. So engaging with the arts, things that make us feel our emotions, are emotionally alive, but also help us articulate it, and not just crude, not crudely, more sort of in depth, can really help. Yeah. So, and then I just thought I would finally talk about, there's lot in the book, there's lots of different ways that he talks about positive emotion and generating positive emotion, but I thought I'd just touch on one, which is the Brahma Viharas. So on one sense we've got this concern to excavate our unconscious mind and really welcome in these exciting emotions and shine a bit of light on them and open up and generate this energy. But we're not letting them just run wild. There's also this sense of refining what's positive and looking what we do have positive experiences and developing that as well. So we've got this set of meditations called the Brahma Viharas, which I will just write up on the flipchart. So the Brahma Viharas are a kind of expansion of the Metta Bhavana. There are 4 positive responses to other people or other beings. Metta, Karuna, which is the second time I've heard that word this evening. Upekkha, and what's the other one is mudita. Okay, so metta, loving kindness. Karuna, compassion. So when metta meets suffering, the appropriate response is compassion. Upekkha is equanimity. Not getting thrown around by one thing or another. Mudita, sympathetic joy. So when metta meets these different experiences of other people, then it has different flavours. So I just want to say something about each of these. So metta is, well, what is the metta the opposite of? What's loving kindness the opposite of? Simple question. Hatred. Yeah. So often we talk about near enemies and far enemies. So the far enemy is what the opposite of something is. And then the near enemy is something that looks a bit like it that we might be taken in by. Yeah. So what would be something a bit like loving kindness that's not the real thing? Pity. Yeah. Attraction. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, lust. Attraction. So like sticky attachment. That's called it. Stickiness. Sorry? Covetousness.
I can't think of that word.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I was thinking about sentiment. Being sentimental, gushy. Okay. Karuna. What's the opposite of compassion? Cruelty. Yeah, perfect. What could be a bit like compassion, but not as good? Patronising, yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's a sense of conceit there, isn't it? Like, you poor thing, patronising. What else?
Empathy.
Who said that? Say?
Empathy.
Empathy. Well, empathy, why is that not as good?
As good, I would say it could be seen as compassion, as in empathy, being empathetic towards someone.
Yeah.
Having compassion could be sort of, compassion is a stronger way, but
Yeah. I think empathy. Well, I think empathy is not a bad thing to be getting on with as a way in. Yeah.
Inconsiderate, just like a lack of consideration, being indifferent, maybe.
I wonder if that might be here. Let's
What about when you're being generous, but for show?
Oh yeah.
Virtue signalling.
Yeah, virtue signalling there, perfect. Looks like compassion, but it isn't. What? I'm thinking of something else as well.
I think you're thinking of horrified anxiety.
Yeah. So can you say something more about that?
Well, you go to a flat and you sort of feel a lot, but it doesn't really address the situation. But it sounds like you're concerned. Maybe you are. But you've got into a state which is more to do with yourself and your own responses than a more objective sense of doing something about what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've become so consumed by our own response. These days it's called overwhelm, which somehow being overwhelmed has turned into a noun. But anyway, when we feel something too strongly to be able to act, which is useless. Okay, so apeka, equanimity. What's the opposite of equanimity? Inequality. Chaos. Judgmental. Temperamental. Yeah, maybe. Instability. Good. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's all over the place, isn't it?
But unintegrated, maybe.
Doesn't equanimity mean to be impartial though?
Equanimity.
In a sense, to be impartial.
Yes, or even. There's a sense of evenness with that impartiality. So not
self-interest.
Attachment.
Yeah. It could be attachment or it could be complete aversion, couldn't it? That though being pushed and pulled, that's what I'm going to put.
Maybe the English language doesn't.
I bet it does. I just probably can't find. That's probably a really obvious word.
Equanimous.
Sorry. Yeah. that really helps us. So, what does equanimity look a bit like? Someone said it. Indifference. Yeah.
Apathy.
Yeah.
How would you describe equanimity?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, well, what do you think's good about being equanimous?
You're not grabbing, you're not clinging, you're not attaching
Yeah.
to your own preferences, your own wants, your own desires.
Yeah. So why is that good?
Because the world often doesn't give you what you want.
Yeah.
It leads to
Okay.
suffering, craving.
Yeah. So it avoids disappointment. That if you don't get what you want, that's good, isn't it? Yeah. Anything else? That's
Sense of like preserving energy.
yeah. How same way?
If you're liable to be rocked from side to side, it takes you a lot of effort to get back in the middle.
Yeah.
I guess.
That's really good. Yeah.
Could it also be linked to like this idea of impermanence, like constantly attaching to a new thing,
Yes. Yeah.
like aversion away from that?
Yeah.
You're not tuning in to the fact that things are constantly changing and moving.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. So when we're equanimous, we're okay with the batterings of life and the changes, the unpredictability of life as well. And actually, it's good to draw this out because equanimous, it can just seem a bit not very interesting in a way, kind of emotional experience. But if you've ever had something close to it in meditation, it's not just a lack of attachment, aversion, etc., or a lack of being blustered around. It's got its own particular energetic quality. So it's not just a negation, but it has got a sense experience that is hard to sort of describe. So does that help at all, Alice?
I think so. So in a sense, you're saying in balance.
Yeah. One of the metaphors that's used is a perfect sphere resting on a perfect plane that can also just then that can just respond as well. So if you're equanimous, it means you're available to respond to whatever's needed in any direction. You're not held captive by something else.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think about it as more like in my day-to-day life as resilience a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Yeah.
There's not really a space.
Yeah,
for
but that's
that,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, and mudita, sympathetic joy. What is the opposite of sympathetic joy?
Jealousy.
Jealousy, yeah. Selfish.
Schadenfreude.
Yeah, that's the classic. I don't know how, I'm just going to put some wiggles there, I don't know how to spell it. And so what looks a bit like sympathetic joy, do you think?
Smugness.
Yeah, it could be smugness, especially if it's in relation to yourself. But-
Passive aggressive.
So say more about that. Who said that? Yeah.
Yeah, just like oh, I'm so glad you're doing so well.
Yeah. Okay.
What about like social climbing, sort of wanting to be around people that are successful, like some way?
Yeah.
Claiming it.
Yeah.
Claiming someone else's joy.
It's like a vicarious kind of, but not in a good way. Sort of identifying with something else, that someone else has done. I don't know how to paraphrase.
Being attached to other people's success.
Yeah.
Sucking up, isn't it?
Yeah.
Living vicariously actually could be one. I think parents can do that quite easily, like
Yeah.
vicariously through their kids.
Sucking up. Yeah. Yeah, not actually living your own life, but sort of attaching yourself to others. So, I mean, this is really helpful because it's just something that we can enrich our practice by. And if there's a suggestion from this evening, it's just to really sort of notice where you might have opportunities to cultivate these. So it might be in meditation when you're doing a metta bhavana, and you can respond more appropriately. But it might be in daily life as well when you're just you could just keep these in mind and see what's the right response. And they've all got this sense of sympathy. So even equanimity, it isn't indifference, it isn't apathy. It's that one's energies are freely available to respond to anybody or anything else. They're not caught up in our own biases. Yeah. Any questions about that little set of teachings?
You said in meditation.
Yeah, you can bring them into your metta practice. Yeah, and sometimes
Is there actually a method to go about each one, a specific sort of approach?
Well, I mean, there's probably quite a lot to be said, but I think you can just you can think about what's the appropriate time to apply it. So if you notice that a friend in your meditation that someone is suffering, and then you can just use that as a prompt to think, okay, so compassion's the right response, karuna, and then kind of work out what that might be. And the same with sympathetic joy. I think particularly with mudita, we probably forget to do that. We're very good at noticing problems, distress, etc. But just letting our spiritual life have this quality of like developing more and more joy, this sense of rejoicing, without being disturbed by other people's triumphs and little successes and big successes and things like that. So probably that's all I have time for. Just a sense of knowing them can help to make your metta bhavana practice more subtle. So it's within the metta practice. Yeah. Yeah, good. Okay, so what do I want? I think we'll just end very short with a very short meditation, just for a few minutes. And what I want you to do is just pick one of these qualities. Oh yeah.
I just had one. Because like if you draw it out like this, it seems like really difficult to attain because there's like so many ways you can go wrong.
Ah.
Is there any like tips for that? I was like, oh no, yeah, I don't know. It seems like a bit sort of demoralizing.
Oh dear. That wasn't the idea. Yeah, so the tip is just to look for any self-involvement in you're trying to purify our emotion. So just notice any sense of self-involvement in there, and just see if you can let go of that. So that really in meditation, there's often just a process of just letting go of self-involvement. So, for example, someone in my family's been quite ill recently, so I could, particularly, I could bring her to mind, and I could, with the best of intentions, be meditating on, and then just think, okay, am I making this a bit more about me? Okay, actually I can just let go of that and just orientate myself more to her, expand away from me, and just by that way you'll naturally come to something. Yeah. Okay. I think that the teaching is that our emotions have energy, and they can be used they can be aligned with our aspirations. It just takes work. So just sitting for a minute, and we're just going to pick one of those Brahma Viharas and one person, and just sit for 3 or so minutes. We're just going to sit. Just think, what would you like to cultivate? Bring someone to mind. What's the response? Is it metta, karuna, upekkha? Is it someone who you get pushed and pulled around with a roller coaster life? Or mudita? You don't need to do very much, just sort of, you might even just say the word karuna or compassion. See if your heart can open a little bit. Okay, thank you everyone. So next week we'll be looking at perfect speech with Amalie Yodin, so do come along. And also, if you haven't yet made a donation on your way out, be great if you're able to give a donation. That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very busy.
Yeah.